Okay, hello and welcome to everyone. Thanks for joining us in this webinar, which has been arranged by the Zenco's Asset Optimisation Group. It's 3 o'clock. I might just wait another minute or two for people to join and then we'll get the presentation, the webinar started. So just stay there for another minute or so and we'll get going. Okay, again, thanks for joining us. So the topic for the webinar is the role of asset optimization in operational transformation and viability. So my name is Steve Corrow and I am the moderator for the webinar. I'm the BD manager for the Zenco Asset Optimisation Group. I've been working with the company for over 15 years and have been involved in asset management and consulting for a similar period of time. Now, this presentation will go for approximately 1 hour. The last 15 minutes of which will be set aside for questions. So if you have a question during the presentation, please go to the QA panel on the right-hand side of your screen and type the question in. This webinar will be recorded and we will send out a link to the recording in the next couple of days. Okay, let's get started by introducing the other presenters in this webinar. Next slide, please, Jim. So I'm joined by 3 panelists who will discuss their viewpoints and experiences on some of the issues we raise in the upcoming slides. So let me introduce Brian Spicer, John Garno and Sergio Ura. I'll hand over to Brian to give us a brief introduction. Over to you, Brian. Brian, you're on mute.
Apologies. So my name's Brian Spicer. My background's in electrical engineering and control systems, and I've been with Zenco Ryerson since 2008.
Okay, thanks, Brian. Over to you, John.
Thanks, Steve. My name's John Garno, currently an asset management consultant. Been with Zenco for a little over 2 years. So I've got a background in coal and electrical engineer by trade. Currently working with a domestic material handling client, providing support to their maintenance systems.
Thanks, John. Now, Sergio. You're on mute, Sergio.
Hello, guys. So I'm Sergio Urra. I'm the director for the Asset Optimization Group in APAC Africa. I've been with Zenco since 2014, and I'm a mechanical engineer by trade, and I've been working on the mining industry, specifically in the copper commodity, for over 15 years, I would say. That's me.
Okay, thanks, Sergio. So let's kick the presentation off. Listen, just a quick note at the start. Most industry references in this presentation will be related to mining. So apologies to anyone who doesn't or hasn't worked in mining. However, I can assure you that the principles are the same regardless of the industry. Okay, Businesses of today are under constant pressure to perform and make profits. That's the reality of doing business. So on this slide, we've got three headings there. So let's talk about strategy. When we talk about operations strategy, we have to start at the top of the organisation. All businesses have, or should have, a business plan with corporate objectives and targets, both short and long term. Invariably, the short-term targets take precedent. When I was a shift engineer working in underground coal mines, I wasn't worried about what was happening next month or next year. My focus was today, tomorrow, and this week. And I had to be totally production focused. Production was the king. Maintenance was lucky to be the best man. If the mining equipment wasn't working, my rear end got kicked. The main deliverable was production regardless of cost or reality. That was over 40 years ago. Have time changed since then? Hopefully they have. And we as asset management practitioners have a job to do, and that is to determine what are the asset management objectives and plans that will help deliver the business plan, both short and long term. So my question to you to think about is, what asset management plans do you have in place to deliver your asset management objectives? Okay, the next one, operational needs. Based on those asset management plans that need to be implemented, has management provided the right resources, both internal and external, to deliver those plans? And are the appropriate systems and processes in place to execute the asset management plans? All things that need to be considered. And then the third one, operations performance. So what measures do you have in place, or does your company have in place to monitor asset performance and asset management performance? Are the assets delivering what the business requires from them? And if not, why not? How much analysis is done on determining what is happening? Is it delivering the targets? If not, why not? And what do you got to do to rectify that problem? Are you operating within budget? Big thing. What are managers most interested in? Senior management, dollars. And if you're not operating within the budget, guess what's going to happen? Cuts are going to occur. How does your company performance compare to your competitors? You hear of different industry standards and best practice, and there are companies that can compare your operations to your competitors to see how you're performing, and they have quartiles, you know, whether in the first, second, third, or fourth quartile. So, you know, to remain in business, you've got to be up there with the best. Will your company survive a major economic downturn like now? Right, with this pandemic, it's causing and it's going to cause a lot of havoc in time to come. So if deficiencies exist in your business regarding these topics, transformation needs to occur for the business to survive both the short and long terms. The transformation needs to occur at all levels, and the cell of transformation is dependent on the target audience. So, you know, within an organization, you have management, then you have you have the senior management, middle management, and then the doers of the work. And depending what the transformation is you need to introduce at what level will depend on how you target your sell to them. So understand the main drivers of your target audience and pitch the sell accordingly. In many cases, we, as in maintenance people, are our own worst enemies when it comes to trying to get an asset management initiative approved and implemented. Historically, and this is from my experience in working in the industry for a long time, maintenance people have not done a good job at showing but the benefits to be gained will far outweigh the costs incurred. So that's that slide. Next, please, Jane. So why is transformation necessary? There are many factors, both internal and external, which drive the need for transformation. A couple of examples. Businesses are exposed to social and political pressures, and we've got a picture there of windmills, of turbines, sorry. And so the conversion from fossil fuel energy production to renewables production. If your business is in the energy business, how are you going to cope with that? Which side are you on? And then another example is economics. In the case of mining, there are variations in commodity prices driven by demand. And a drop in demand can be driven by events such as the current pandemic. A lot of mining companies are suffering because of the drop in demand. However, as we can see from the graph, not all commodity prices move in the same direction. Anyone who has gold has seen the price increase. So if you are a gold miner, the economic impact is positive, as long as the operations are still able to run and produce. I've given you two examples there. There are many other factors that have a direct or indirect impact on the viability of a business. The bottom line, how can you position your business from an asset management viewpoint to have your assets performing optimally, regardless of what the scenario is, as far as pandemics, GFCs, or really good times go? And the major question is, when is the best time to optimize? When times are good? Are you being proactive? Or when the need arises, so being reactive? Things to consider. So next slide, please, Jane. So where to start? I'll hand over to Sergio and he'll talk about the next two slides. Thanks, Sergio.
Yes, thanks, Steve. So look, one of the things that we're looking when we're viewing this whole issue from the asset optimization point of view is, what are the key things that you should be managing or trying to address at this stage? One is budget optimization, and we put that like for a good reason. It's not just cost reduction, it depends. As Steve explained, some commodities go up, some commodities go down, but in the end, you need to make sure that you're optimizing your budget and you have the tools to optimize that budget, managing the risk. And that is one of the key things that we want to try to explain. It's not just about changing your cost or changing your cost profile, but it needs to be linked to, okay, what is the risk for my business to, for instance, stop some work or defer some maintenance work that needs to happen on our assets? What is going to be the impact on the performance of my assets, if I do that? And also how the performance of basically the operational needs will change my cost profile. And of course, all of this is part of the general maintenance management that we talk about, So that's why we basically succinctly try to focus on these, items, and that is very much related with the asset management framework, as you can see. So next slide, please. And I want to put a little bit of focus on, some of the things. So we're always balancing, cost, performance, and risk when we're doing our decision making, So performance is about getting the availability and reliability, so making our assets, to perform in the way that the business expects. Of course, we need to work on, work reduction for emergency work and trying to go to a profile where we're doing more preventive and proactive maintenance than what we do, reactively. That, of course, is balanced with the risk. So when we do things, we need to be focused, of course, in zero damage. That is integral part for any business. We need to be looking at the integrity of our assets, and we need to be able to make informed decisions, And of course, all of this has impact on cost. So we need to understand where the costs that we are incurring, are acceptable, for that level of risk. We need to see if there is sustainability in the long term. And this is very important because we can look at stuff, and I've seen, examples in my experience where people just did production regardless of, anything else. And the outcome from that was areas that were devastated by the poor usage and maintenance. And after it took years after the fact to try to come back to the same levels of performance. So it's something very important to keep in mind, looking for the long-term sustainability, and of course using the effective of our people and skill sets and the stock levels. And all of that is driven, in the greater framework of operational excellence. How do we make continuous improvement? How do we drive innovation and bring innovation into our businesses? How do we set up standards so everyone understands how they need to work and how they're working on it? And of course, applying, benchmarking, knowing what the others are doing. That is key for us to understand. We all, even as individuals, need to look for references to understand whether we are performing as we is expected or not. So this is some of the focus areas that we will discuss. We have a few functions for those, and that's what I wanted to say to you at this stage. Thanks, Steve.
Okay, thanks, Sergio. So the next slide talks about the maintenance pillars. The four key pillars that we relate to maintenance, and this has been previously depicted using the plan, do, check, act type diagram, but I'll talk about each pillar. So the maintenance pillars for continuous improvement. The first one, strategy. So I've discussed in the previous slide business plan, corporate objectives, and asset management objectives. But now we're down to the maintenance strategies or the maintenance tactics. And what we recommend is that by using RCM methodology, you can determine what are the maintenance activities required for an asset to reliably and consistently deliver its function. Okay, the next step is work management. So this is the process that's, or the formed process for execution of those maintenance activities. So we determine what maintenance we need to do. Now we have to make sure we do it efficiently. And your work management system is around the basic processes are identify work, plan work, schedule work, execute work, record and record history, and then analyze performance. So those are the basic activities, and they should be formalized within your organization so that everybody knows what they need to do in the maintenance department, and there is no confusion about who does what or why wasn't that done. Once we've done the work, then we need to do a review and analysis process of maintenance performance and asset performance. And we need to identify from that review and analysis what needs to be improved. And then determine associated corrective actions. So a defect elimination program using RCA methodology helps to improve asset reliability by minimizing unplanned failures, right? Again, basic asset management type philosophy and approach. And the last pillar there is about that, okay, we've got all this information, all these corrective actions, so we need to implement those and get our continuous improvement underway. And by continuous improvement, we're saying that this is not a one-off process. It's a continual process throughout your whole operation because things change, right? The production the production levels may change, and it may mean you need to do more maintenance or less maintenance, right? There's a whole lot of factors that change, and your continuous improvement process will cover all those as long as you keep it up. Now, these four pillars, and all this is predicated on having the right skilled people, the right systems, and the right processes for all this to work. Okay, next slide, please, Jan. So what we'll do now is we'll consider examples of how asset optimization has been used in operational transformation. Each one of the panelists will discuss one such example. So next slide, and I'll hand it over to Brian to discuss that slide.
Thanks, Steve, and welcome everybody. But what we're talking about and looking at now is we are sitting in unprecedented times. As you can see behind me, I'm not at work. The rest of the presenters, we're not at work. We've got travel restrictions. Borders are actually closed. We've got mine sites with reduced production. There are sites around the world which are completely shut down. There's pressure on budgets, cutting budgets. There's situations where people cannot get to sites, where maintenance personnel cannot get to sites. We've seen examples where lead times of equipment and components have been blown out of the water. I'm in Queensland and we regularly ship gifts down to Melbourne. Takes 2 to 3 days to arrive. Now 3 to 4 weeks. So imagine you're in charge of the maintenance of a mine site and you've got these lead time blowouts and you've got high turnover of components. What do you actually do? And which components, which spares do you actually target to expedite and start ordering well in advance? And one of our clients in Australia was wise when this happened, and they focused on key parts. But what helps you focus on key critical parts in times of unprecedented activities like now? So one thing which really assists is criticality analysis, knowing which assets are the most critical. Now, a lot of sites, a lot of people say, I don't need that. I know what's critical. It's obvious. The mill's critical, or this piece of equipment's critical. So when I started with Ausenco Rylstone in 2008, I heard a spine-chilling story about a plant in Northern Territory. They knew what, or they thought they knew what was critical. And then one day, a dreaded alarm, emergency alarm went off. Now, most people know the sound of these alarms, but this one was one that no one ever wanted to hear. The second thing that people did was look at the windsock. Where was the wind blowing? So you probably got an idea of what I'm talking about. It was an ammonia leak, a massive ammonia leak. Now, they thought they knew what was critical. The ammonia plant did not rate as critical. So these people raced into their crib room. They fortunately had some duct tape. They taped the whole room off. Now, you imagine a little bit of gas, ammonia gas coming in there, you can be sick, ill, and fatalities. They thought they knew what was critical. So part of criticality analysis, you also look at criticality criteria. So in this instance, one of the criteria that you assess criticality is reputation. So did this affect reputation? Yes, it was on the news. Everybody knew about this particular event. Another criteria is safety. Did this affect safety? Absolutely. Another factor is costs. Absolutely. This mine was shut down. The inspectors were there straight after the event. Huge costs. Did it affect the environment? Yes. Did it affect health? It could have done. So this is why criticality analysis is really important to fully understand, because sleeping things like an ammonia plant away from the main production can cost you dearly. So the other good thing that criticality analysis does, helps you make factual, informed decisions on where to focus your tactics development, where to focus your work management, and also what spares. You need to audit your spares. You know, you've got a problem with spares, and it's typically the biggest issue in most mines, especially remote mines. But where do you start? Critical assets. Defect elimination, continuous improvement activities. Again, focusing on equipment criticality analysis, and also continuous condition monitoring, and also tactics review. So all these are reasons for something which sounds innocuous, criticality analysis, who cares? Super valuable, super important. So if there's one takeout, contemplate criticality analysis. And we'll hand over to the next slide. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. So John's going to talk about this slide. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Steve. So this key function is about allowing informed decision-making by understanding full operational life cycles. So this aspect of transformation is about enabling an organisation to make decisions based on the reality of their operation and the reality of their assets. So I'll go through a couple of recent examples as I talk through this, and we can see the range of decisions which are driven by this operational lifecycle. So the first key point there is activity-based budgets. So what we're talking about here is budgets produced from a zero base. So this is building up budgets from the activities which are driven from the strategies, as Brian was explaining. So when we talk about this, this is both operational and capital budgets. So the day-to-day operations and the long-term sustaining view. So it allows an understanding of an individual asset, but we can also take the viewpoint of an entire plant or a fleet. So one example which comes to mind for this is a recent gold miner in PNG I was working with. So we built up their zero-based budget from their strategies. So it gave them an insight into their own maintenance cost profiles. This was per equipment, per fleet. We started to look at the total cost of ownership. So through understanding the life cycle, they were able to make informed decisions about their asset disposal. We even took this a step further. We're able to plan out the life of mine capital replacement. So it enabled them to have informed fact-based decisions for these major events. Another example about the life cycle is a similar client here in Australia, a domestic client. So for them, we built a 15-year capital and operational budgets. So this is across 6 different sites geographically located throughout Queensland. So this 15-year budget allows them to make decisions based off the short-term and long-term goals, which are set by their business strategy. As Steve was explaining, they can act today with 15 years in mind. So the second key point there is about spares and workforce requirements. So the activity-based budgets which we've produced enable a deep dive into resources required over a life cycle. This also allows informed decision-making. Another example is a remote client we have in remote Canada. So they needed to understand their material usage in extreme detail. They can only get deliveries 6 months of the year through the summer months. So understanding material usage provided information for them to make decisions and risk-based approaches to maintenance procurement. Similarly, the information can flow into a spares criticality assessment. It provides the right information to make informed decisions on stocking classifications, for example. And it also applies to workforce requirements. So from an activity-based budget built from the operational life cycle, a labour profile can be built up. It enables informed decisions surrounding the baseline of labour requirements as well as any contractor requirements. And the third point is based on production needs. So doing the zero-based budget based on full operational life cycle, it gives us the power to model multiple scenarios. So we can understand scenarios like a pessimistic or an optimistic or a realistic viewpoint. So changing these production needs provides an understanding of the operation in a variety of situations. And the key to understanding all of this full operational life cycle, it enables the understanding of the weaknesses, the strengths, and the opportunities from the strategy and from the strategies in decision making. I'll hand it over to the next slide, Sergio.
Thanks, John. So Sergio, over to you.
Thanks, Steve. So look, one of the other topic that we wanted to discuss has to do with performance. So we know that in our companies, data is flowing consistently. We have operational data, we have condition monitoring sensors there, we have technology to group them, and we can do a lot of processing of that information, but we need to try to think about all of that in a more, defined framework, to try to, circumvent some of the issues that we may get in this whole process. So we like to talk about the TerraCycle. And in this case, we're talking about, we gather information, then we centralize, we have the PI systems or whatever data, warehouse do we have in our companies where we put all of that information in. Then there is the issue about data classification. So when you're talking about particularly failure data, we need to be able to classify that data properly. And how many of us have, doing reliability work have found in situations where they have a lot of information of a stoppage of equipment, but to get to the point where you can actually determine which are the failure modes occurring in those, it's really tricky. So again, something that we need to think about, not just gathering, but how are we classifying, how are we enable our companies to, and our personnel to classify that properly. Then we need to integrate, operations, maintenance information, cost information. All of that needs to be put into one consistent system to do data processing, and then we can just start analyzing. So, look at the issues. One is data quality. How many of us have been to sites where the quality of the data is not that good? How are you going to be able to do proper decision making with data that is not able to be transformed into information? So there's when it comes, there are tools in these days that allow you to do reintegration. So look at your data, like put it apart and put it together in ways that now will be more meaningful. And we can do that on previous, data, not just the one that you're starting to collect today. That will allow us to do the adequate reprocessing to make sure that we're calculating, the numbers that matter, the numbers that impact on our bottom line, the ones that we understand are part of the goals of the business, And today also we have the technology and the capacity, basically, because it's much cheaper than in the past, to throw computer power onto whatever analysis that we're doing. And we are even able to train, machines to do that. But to train, and this is something that, because everyone talks about machine learning like this big new thing, it's not new, it's pretty old. Statistical analysis have been existed for quite a while now. The difference now is that we have the processing power to do it better and to do it with more data, but we need data to train those models. And that data needs to be consistently and properly classified and integrated. So if we go and we don't have good quality data, whatever system what we can build, using all of the new technologies won't matter, because we are not able to classify exactly information to train a particular algorithm to find what you're looking for. So you need to be mindful about that. Drive, the data gathering and hold the data cycle from the perspective of what are the goals, what are the issues in each of the steps that I need to manage, and how do I use the technology to use it, but not use technology just for the sake of it. We need a lot of work. And none of this needs to be sustained by cultural change. I remember the times when, condition-based monitoring was new in a way, some of the techniques were coming apart. Companies were starting to take this on board. But what happened is that you have, the technology, you have people that you train to use all the tooling existing, but then the company didn't make any changes or didn't take the advice for the condition monitoring departments because they weren't used to things, they were used to do the things the way that they have always done it. So again, we get a new technology, we train our people in the skill, but we don't change the mindset of the rest of the company. And what happens? You don't get the benefit. So always think about that. Think about what I want you to take from this is think about the quality of your data, think about the data cycle as a whole when you're thinking about implementing some of these initiatives, and remember cultural change. That is essential. So that's for me, Steve.
Okay, thanks, Sergio, and thanks, John and Brian. So the next thing we're going to consider, as per the slide there, is some recommendations for supporting the transformation journey. So again, the three panelists are going to discuss this and share their thoughts on this. And in the first instance, I'll hand it over to Brian.
Thanks, Steve. So imagine if you're a project manager, and some of you are now and some of you have been, and you've got consultants out across some mine sites, and this unprecedented event hits, COVID, which has just happened earlier this year. But what if you had 60 consultants across mine sites? And what if you're in 3 countries, 3 continents, and in 8 different countries? Well, that's exactly what happened to us. I'm the project manager of exactly that type of a project. So when COVID hit, we were in trouble. Suddenly, all our consultants could not go to a mine site. We could not add value to our client. We could not assist our client work in the way we were. So we had to do something very different very quickly. Fortunately, at this time, Ausenco a month earlier had installed what's called Microsoft Teams, and hopefully you've all heard of it and your organisation does have Microsoft Teams. So when this happened, the first thing we said, while people were still on site because it was shutting down slowly across different sites around the world, grab as much information, as much data as you can. But how do we share that data? How do we know that the client and us are working on the same data? So that stage I stopped everything, jumped on the web, started learning about Microsoft Teams, and I'm happy to say that Microsoft Teams is simple. probably one of the easiest types of software to use, which has massive benefits. So our people started working from home, our consultants around the globe, and worked effectively. Quality and output has not dropped off since the COVID actually hit and working from home. We ran workshops remotely from home as well. So what does Microsoft Teams actually do for us? So Microsoft Teams in one environment allows you to have meetings. You can actually record your meetings. You can share videos. Another personal thing that Microsoft Teams delivered for us is we have videos of our faces, like myself and my colleagues you can see now. But when we chat in meetings quite regularly, we can see everybody's faces as if we're relating in the same room with them, which is good for morale, good for health, good for client relationships as well. Also, Microsoft Teams allows you to chat backwards and forwards, send text messages, you can ring, you can share your screen. So quite regularly on a day-to-day basis, I'll have many chats, or I just jump and call my colleagues and we'll share screens. And so it's a very effective way to work while you're in absolute total isolation. Another feature of Microsoft Teams is that you can have what's called private channels, where you can invite a select group of people on confidential projects you're working on or activities. And in these private channels and all teams, you can store information. Some people are aware of Microsoft SharePoint. Well, behind the scenes, Microsoft Teams is actually SharePoint, but you don't have to know about Microsoft SharePoint. In actual fact, Teams makes things flow a lot simpler than the previous software that it had. Another feature of Microsoft Teams is you can have apps included. We have Power BI, which is business reporting tool, charting, evaluating reports, etc. And one that I love personally is called a planner. So in Planner, you can assign tasks to people. You can put a start date, you can put end dates, you can actually put in a status. You can have subtasks and actually tick the subtask off as people go through them. You can also chart pie charts, counts, etc., like a little KPI of all of these tasks that your people are doing across the globe, managed all in a simple central location. So what this has done for us in a time of crisis actually allowed us to be quite agile. We collaborate very closely with our clients. The data is transparent because our clients are in the same Microsoft Teams as we are. It gives us the agility and immediacy to continue to work. And the beautiful thing is it gives us information management. We store in the files in one location where everybody knows where it is and can access it. So that was our journey, and I highly recommend people taking a little bit of time, only a couple of hours, and jumping onto Microsoft Teams and learning a bit more. So that's all from me. So I'll hand over to the next slide. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. So John's going to talk about this next slide. Over to you, John.
Thanks, Steve. So similarly to what Brian was saying, we've seen a change in how things are running, whether it's the collaboration. And what I'm going to talk about is Agile. So Agile methodology implementation. So a lot of the transformations we've recently seen, they've shifted away from this major project delivery type model, which we're used to seeing aspects of an Agile methodology. So I'll take a step back and what is Agile methodology? It's very popular in software development with roots in manufacturing, but it's a project management methodology. So it's all about breaking up a complex problem or transformation into stages. So at the core is collaboration. It promotes the flexibility as well as the name suggests, agility throughout the process. So interactions are promoted between the teams, so with the goal of trying to combat working in silos, which many of us have seen in industry and the bad impacts they can have on a transformation. So we start with defining what are the goals of transformation. So what are the long-term achievement that the business is trying to achieve? So this is full collaboration with all the stakeholders to get a detailed understanding of why a transformation is happening. Then we look at breaking this transformation down into much smaller segments. So we're constantly showing the results from each smaller segment and assessing how it achieves the purpose. We're ensuring the expectations still align with the direction of the transformation. So a lot of the key parts we're seeing in the Agile framework how we see this transformation is heading. So we've got the scrums and the sprints. These are the smaller segments of the transformations which are being developed. Often they're specialised teams handling a specialised tasks, but they form part of a bigger transformation. We also can see a backlog. So this is a priority list of aspects of the transformation. So throughout a transformation journey, things might change, things might move or change priority. And we've also seen in progress and done type terminology. This is ensuring that transformations become traceable. People can see how they did things in the past, and this could impact how they're doing it now. So the big benefit which we're seeing is the promotion of teamwork, where it's allowing projects to respond to change driven internally and externally. And I think Agile is going to be something that we'll see more of in the industry, particularly around the transformations. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Josh. The third recommendation is going to be presented by Sergio, so I'll hand it over to you, Sergio.
Thanks, Steve. So look, the last bit is like, if you look at the way that we have phrased our recommendation, what has to do with systems, using the collaboration tools that the organization has. That is sort of like the system approach, and how can that support that? The second step, and what John was talking about, is a process, a process of doing project management and of adjusting. But of course, we know that the third bit of that, it's always your people, and the big thing here is, because of the current situation, and the inability to travel and in many ways to see people face to face. One of the things that has been a challenge for every manager in any organization has been, how do you still convey your goals? How do you set up your expectations? How do you make sure that your teams understand what you're looking for and what is the bigger picture in all of this? So the key thing here is that we need to be able to inspire the teams regardless. We have the technology, as we saw, and the methodologies to do it, but we need to be able to provide a clear vision, and objectives to each one of them. Brian was talking about this massive project that we have globally, and how do we make sure that everyone keeps motivated? How do we ensure that everyone still, feels the drive to do the work that we expect from them? So of course that has to do with the clear vision, making sure that everyone is understanding everything, is understanding of what are the goals and the objectives. Of course, there is the thing about communication, talking. I don't know if this has happened to you guys, but in my case, we have been talking more with my team more than ever before, because we are using the communication tools that exist. It's easier, it's ubiquitous, you can do it from your mobile, your computers and everything. So we talk a lot and we try to understand a lot, and for that, we need to sort of like go through the more of a coaching approach, trying to explain why you want to get some goal, try to explain to your people, why are you looking for this, for them get the motivation. You're not going to be able to be there. You're not going to be able to control everything that everyone is doing, especially in these times. So you need to make sure that everyone understands the drive behind what everyone else is doing. And of course, also it has to do with, professional development, understanding how it's for them a good thing to be working on this, on doing the activities, what is in it for them. We all are driven through things that we want and we think that have value for us. So make sure that you think about that when you're talking to your people. Where are they going? Where do they fit in the project, And again, all of this is basically to enable people to work remotely, to not being overlooked all the time and feel supported, because that is the key thing. We're talking about how we support the journey, and to support means supporting people, means talking to them, understanding them, and making sure that you are providing, what the team needs. So again, there is a lot to talk in here, but this is one of the focus in Ausenco, in our group. And this is something that we think, honestly, we have been very successful in achieving. And I think it's because everyone understands, where we are going and how do we need to tackle the current issues, and the challenges that we are facing. So that's for me, Steve. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Sergio. So, in summary, we've discussed reasons why you would need to look at operational transformation. And there are a lot of reasons out there. As I've said previously, they can be internal, external, or both. The current predicament that all businesses face at the moment is due to this pandemic that's rocked the world in a big way, totally unprecedented in this modern age. So what we've done is that we've presented some ways in which asset optimization can be used in operational transformation, and then we've made some recommendations for supporting the transformation journey. So what I'll do now is I'll just go and we'll start to look at some of our questions. We're doing really well with time. 45 minutes exactly for our presentations, now 15 minutes of questions, as I predicted at the start. Okay, we've got a question here. Have you seen a company or companies embrace asset management successfully? Well, in response to that, the first thing I'd say is we know nobody or no company is perfect. So there's no company out there that I would say would tick all the boxes for implementing asset management. But that's not to say that there are plenty of companies out there that are doing a damn good job and doing the best they can. And I would say that it's only over the last 10, 15 years that you've really started to see that transition happen. So going from a stage of being totally reactive to becoming proactive and to really, and I think that there's been a lot of pressure from management, from boards, you know, economic pressures as far as, you know, increasing return to shareholders, etc. But yes, I think that there have been companies that we've seen, we've worked with, that have done a really good job in trying to introduce asset management practices. Is there anybody that's perfect at it? No, I couldn't say there is. So, guys, any comments from any one of you?
Look, if I can add something, Steve, one of the things in that sort of question poses like, is there someone perfect? Is there someone in the middle? Like, what is the reference? But what we've seen, you know, when we are doing audits and finding, you know, how everyone is performing, you find also different levels, you know, within the same organization. So when you look at the different business processes, you know, in areas of expertise, some companies are really good at some of them, but are really bad at others. So again, there is always a mixmatch, and that also has to do with, you know, the company goals. You know, not everyone needs to be also like the best in, you know, the business, in the way that some focus needs to go into, I don't know, work management is a key one for most organizations. You know, maybe condition-based monitoring will apply more to some kind of assets, you know, but less to other kinds of assets. So that changes. So again, there is a lot of variability in you know, what our clients require. And what I would say is that you need to tailor basically these to whatever is your need, and you need to understand where do you want to go in order to achieve that.
Totally agree, Sergio. Totally agree, because as you across different industries, there's different corporate goals, targets, etc. So it just depends on what they are and how they roll down to the asset management space. Another question: how do we convince management of the importance of asset management? So I did do some talking about this in previous slides, but one of the things I've learned early on with the Zenko from marketing viewpoint, that there are 3 levels in an organization that you have to target. One is the budget holder, and that's normally the senior management. The other one is the buyer, the person who wants to implement the initiative, the improvement. And then the third one is the user, the person who has to actually do what the improvement is. And you have to sell at each one of those levels. And as I said in the slides, you know, it's a different approach depending on which one of those 3 groups you're aiming for. Managers, etc., are interested in dollars, right? How are you going to improve their profits? How, you know, by increasing throughput, production, etc., and reducing costs. The buyer wants a technical solution, so the technical guy, he wants a technical solution, one that will deliver what he needs to do what he has to do to deliver the asset management objectives. And chances are that he'll have some sort of a bonus associated with what he delivers come the end of the year. So it's a technical approach to that person, you know, convincing him that this will technically do exactly what you need. And the third one is the users, right? Now, the amount of times that I've been asked is, okay, what's in it for me? And that's what, as an asset management practitioner, that's what you have to address. In your company, you have to convince the guys who are doing the use of that initiative, you have to convince them that there's a benefit for them. Make their life easier, whatever that benefit is, right? That's one way of getting it over the line and getting all parties on board with what the initiative is and hopefully getting it through. So, guys, any other comments from you?
Well, I suppose I'll jump in there as well. Like, similar to what myself and Sergio discussed as part of our functions, it's all surrounding data. So, as we say, there's a lot of data out there, but if you can present data in the right way and do the right analytics with it, you can make those informed decisions, and you can provide management all the information they need to back up your decision or to back up your philosophy either way you're heading. So I think that's a big one as well, just making sure the right data is available to support what you want to do.
Good point, John, good point. Okay, another question. Is there any benefit in gaining certification to the asset management standard? Good question. The standards now, well, we used to have in years gone by PAS 55, which is a British standard, and that used to be the only standard that was available for asset management. And then the ISO 55000 series came in a few years ago. So is there a benefit? Well, that depends on your business. I definitely agree that there's a benefit in having compliance to the standard. The standard directs you on how to set up a proper asset management system. Do you go for certification? That's purely up to your business, and you need to understand what is the driver for going for certification. Does the benefits achieved from getting certification outweigh the cost of actually going for certification? So in answer to that question, definitely compliance as far as certification goes, purely company driven and you know, the decision of the company itself. Guys, any comments? No, they're remaining very quiet. So here's one about change management and cultural change that Sergio spoke about. What do you do when someone says, but this is the way we have always done it and it has always worked in the past? If not, we wouldn't be here. Well, if things were going really well, I wouldn't be here discussing it with you right now. So someone in your organisation thinks that things can be done better. And that's why, as a consultant, we're being called in to identify what the improvements are and then to come up with the recommendations and an implementation plan. So, but how many times have we been, throughout the years, been given that speech? This is the way we've always done it. And this is where having a good change management system in place is so crucial for getting the change that's been identified implemented into your organisation. Because if everybody's not on board, I've had one specific case where a guy has sat across the table from me and he looked me in the eye and he said, yeah, we have you consultants coming in here. Once you're gone, we'll go back to doing things the way we always used to do them. And it felt like jumping across the table. But anyway, so guys, any other comments on that?
Look, what I would say about this is it has a lot to do with also looking at yourself and sort of like in which way we can influence the people that we're working with. You know, what are the things that drive them, you know, and what is the the connection that you can make with them to make them understand, you know, this is why we're doing it. We talked a little bit when we were talking about cultural change. But look, there is a lot of good information out there about influencing and how to properly influence, you know, how you tackle each of the different stages. It's not just about having the knowledge. It's not just about being good at communicating that knowledge. It's also about creating connections with the people that you deal with, you know. So it's just like in any case in life, it's something that we need to, you know, be mindful about it. And I would say for myself, at least, and my experiences, it has taken a lot of learning to try to be able, you know, to be able to communicate, you know. One of the things that happened to me, I used to be a consultant in the beginning, but I have never worked on the mining industry per se, or any industry specifically. I started as a consultant. And the truth is that after I went to actually work for a company, you know, and do the internal bidding in a way, you start to realize a lot of the reasons why some things that you thought they were really good ideas don't really work in the reality of an operation. And that's also something that we need to understand. You know, we all probably have some degree of operational experience, and I think that it's key to be able to relate to people and to set that connection. You know, so yeah, that's an aspect that it's important.
So true, Sergio, so true. Okay, another question. Have you seen examples of where the process of transformation has led to operation shrinking? I've not so much operation shrinking, but I've seen the number of assets reduce. So the utilisation improve on assets. And a classic example is in a mining environment with haul trucks. The operational people have a history of more, right? The more haul trucks we have, the better we can cater for the fact that maintenance is not done properly. But then once the maintenance systems are set up properly, the utilisation of the haul trucks improves, and therefore the number of haul trucks reduce. So that's one example I can think of. Guys, anything from you?
I'll say I've seen examples where it's not necessarily the process of transformation, but it's been the driver for the transformation is the need to shrink. So one example comes to mind where an operation was going into care and maintenance. So it had to go from a fully production orientated and fully operating into a care and maintenance type of realm to then sometime in the future be put back into operation. So I suppose that operation doesn't, transformation's done always as what we see a good thing. They, as we can say, they sometimes can be seen as in a bad light, but this one was about transforming an operation to be put into care and maintenance to then excel once it comes out. So that's probably an example where the transformation was the operation shrinking in itself.
Okay, John, not Sergio, Brian, nothing from you guys. Okay, one more question. How mature are companies in Australia with regards to asset management practices as compared to other countries? So, got to be careful what I say. We would like to think that we're pretty mature here in relation to asset management. Yes. But we do see a lot of variation across the different continents. And so people who work for global companies will understand that, you know, different cultures and the progress of, you know, becoming a global company in different regions has varied. So their exposure to global practices like, you know, especially with asset management has varied across those regions. So yes, there is a variation. You would like to think that Australia is more mature in its development of and its progress with asset management practices. Having said that, we still see a lot of, and based on that previous question about, but this is the way we've always done it, we still get a lot of resistance at sites as to why they need to change. Okay, comments, guys?
Look, being the foreigner here, what I would say is that, yeah, the difference I would say is it has to do more with the discipline of the people in doing their activities, not necessarily the mindset. So I would find that, in different places around the world, there are always very insightful people and people that are good at what they do. I think the overarching thing that I see here in Australia in some regards is like the skill set is very good. The skills of the people that doing the work, it's very good and it's very sort of like level. The basic level is pretty good compared to, countries where I have worked on. But other than that, like from a more broader thing, no, I think you find those guys that sort of like are reluctant to change, and you have guys very driven. So again, it's a mix.
Yeah, and that last comment, Sergio, again, I stress the point, change management is so crucial for any sort of transformation, any improvement, right? Whether it be asset management or any other aspect, function within business. Unless you've got a change management program in place, it's going to be so difficult to get that change. We see situations where the change gets implemented, but it's not sustainable, right? There's no continuity of it staying there because people go back to the way they used to do things. Okay, that's the last of the questions. So our hour is up. So thank you everybody for joining, and I'd like to thank the panelists for being involved with this. As I said at the start, that we'll be sending out an email to all the people who participated, sending them a link to the recording of this webinar in the next couple of days. So again, thank you very much, and we'll sign off there.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.